All right, so low levels of zany today, not as much zaniness. Um, I've spent just as much time watching this debate as I have the rest of them. But what I did was I spent more time on the first half, and then I'm going to spend more time on the second half because it's really what happens. It's a debate of two halves. Um, and actually, I can keep it pretty brief too, I believe, because they're really concise in their conversation here in the first part. So Penrose talks about three mysteries in the universe. Um, and he says that the first mystery is the mystery of the physical. Now, I want to tell you from the outset, this gets really good because he's not able to talk about any one element without attaching it to the other elements. And that's very important. So he'll say this. He says, well, the first mystery is the mystery of the physical, but then he says it's how mathematics is able to so accurately be accounted for in the physical universe. So, example, on the Apollo 13 mission, when things were going bad, they needed to find a way back to Earth. So they had to do a calculation that caused them to slingshot around the moon. And that's really not annoying. Somehow, I still get telemarketers. How is that possible in this day and age? And I'm getting them on my phone, my smartphone too. Anyway, sorry about that. So you take the Apollo 13 mission and they have to calculate how to slingshot themselves around the moon. And they did this with mathematics. And then they had to enter the Earth's atmosphere. And it was a very slight margin of error. And so they had to use math to do that. And they did it with great precision. Now, what he's onto, though, is more about the initial states of the universe. He believes there was something before the Big Bang, that makes the most sense to him. And therefore, and he just looks at these initial conditions and saying they're just mathematically so specific. And in fact, at some point later in the debate, he'll say, what we expected to see is there was a background noise in the universe. If you're not aware of this, it's really fascinating. I think it happened around the invention of the radio telescope, where they just started tracking, radio signals. So there was just this background noise. And they found out later that the best answer for that was the Big Bang. And now, don't think that this in any way denies the existence of God. If anything, it seems to be more evidence for God. Just putting that out there to think about. But they said that the noise came from everywhere. And so Penrose said, well, when we get back to the initial conditions, as they were doing the math and everything, they thought it's going to be a chaotic mess. And he said, I didn't quite understand. He was saying we expected a high entropy, and it turned out to be low entropy, or something along those lines. Not sure what that means. But he said it turns out that those initial conditions were very, very mathematically precise. It was really interesting. So, the physical. Okay, then the next mystery is the abstract. And he said, this is the realm of mathematics. And he said, why should the realm of mathematics apply to the physical realm? Why? And he didn't put it quite in those words. In fact, he didn't make it clear what the connection is. But he just basically said that's the second mystery, is the abstract. And just that mathematics, they don't have any effect. They don't cause anything. Craig kept calling them causally effete. And I've tried this. It just means that they don't have any power to cause. I tried this on my boss at work. She said, hey, can you go do this? And I went, I said, your instructions are causally effete. And then I had to go do what she wanted me to do. But anyway, so it turns out they weren't causally effete. And then the final was cognition, the final mystery. This was by far the most interesting. And what he was saying is this: how is it that our minds are able to both observe the abstract and apply it to the physical? He called this the mental realm. And it's really interesting, our ability to, and these three things are interconnected in some sense, but how? He didn't know. So it became Craig's turn, and Craig goes, well, this is the ancient, dilemma of the one and the many. Now that should have sent up quite a few red flags for Penrose. How is it that ancients had this one figured out thousands of years ago, and you're just now figuring it out? Now it's really funny. 'Cause don't be too. I wouldn't be too hard on Penrose. He came, he reinvented the wheel a little bit here, but he did come at it from a fresh angle, and that's really good. But it just goes to show that the universities, they've become less dynamic in how people are becoming trained. So people are becoming so singular. By the time you do PhD work, you're in one element, so focused in, it's possible that you've missed tons of things in your education. And he really struggled with what Craig was trying to say, and he kept trying to debate in circles. He definitely tried to debate in circles, and Craig what Craig is very good at doing, is saying, I've already spoke to that. He would say, I've already spoke to that. He's very good at doing that because I've seen this so many times where they'll try to argue in circles with him. They'll go back because they're not interested in knowing the truth. Now, there's more that could be said about this. And I know I spent no time talking about who won the debate or anything like that. And the reason why I didn't do that is because this really was a meeting of the minds. I have a really hard time. I'm just going to say it. If I have to pick a winner, I'm going to pick Craig. But I'm biased. I think Craig's view just makes more sense to me. But I also see how Penrose would struggle with what Craig was saying. And what was Craig saying, just so you know? What Craig was saying is this. Of these three realms, what unifies them? And Craig says it's the mind. In caused and uncaused, tenseless, timeless mind with enormous power and that exists in the realm of the infinite, right? And so Penrose was like, well, it seems like, see, he says, I place it in the abstract and you're placing it in the mind. He goes, so we have a very different way of looking at this. And you could just see that Penrose was having the hard, Craig made it very clear. The problem with your position, he says, I appreciate what you're saying, but you can't arrive at cause from there. Whereas with mental states, this is what he said earlier in the debate. It's kind of confusing when you watch it. He says, your mental states can cause physical changes. My mind can cause me to get up and go somewhere. Right? He said, so it's not that big of a stretch to say that causality comes from the realm of the mental. Really, really fascinating stuff. And Penrose did not hear that and go, now that makes a lot of sense. I'll have to think about that. He said something that's pretty reasonable. He said, look, Penrose said there's all these complicated mathematical, algorithms and everything, and you're summing up with just the simple answer. And the funny thing about that is it's like, well, that doesn't make that incorrect, right? But it does make it difficult to accept, especially for an unbeliever. But one last thing, Penrose did something that should have gave Craig some red flags. Penrose at one point goes, these kind of religious views, and Craig goes, he's like, sorry, he's like, this is not a religious view, it's a philosophical view. That should have given Craig some red flags. Why? It should have told him that Penrose was in the back of his mind going, all right, this is a religious position that I need to deal with. He wasn't going to hear the angle Craig was coming from on this, I believe, and he really didn't. Like I said, he didn't even deal with what Craig was saying in terms of causality. So the first half of the debate again, I'm going to say it went to Craig, but I'm leery to say that because it's not that Craig didn't win, and my honest opinion is that he did, but I am being extremely biased. It was very hard to come to a conclusion out of all this. I think you can see that. But if you're to watch this, this is the deep end of the pool in some regards. I mean, it's you should watch. It's not that you wouldn't be capable, whoever you are, of watching. Anyone can watch it and understand it. They keep it at a level that people can understand. Justin Briley keeps it in line. But I will deal with the second half very, very shortly.